Have you ever noticed that everyone talks about the empty nest syndrome? They tell you how hard it will be when your kids graduate, move out, and start their own lives. People prepare you for the silence after they leave the house, but no one prepares you for the years before that, when little by little, some goodbyes happen quietly. Today, we're going to talk about that. So settle in, grab your coffee, or warm up your second cup of the day for the 15th time, and let's get into this.
There's a hope that's waiting for you in the dark. You should know you're beautiful just the way you are. You don't have to change a thing, the world can change its heart. No scars to you're beautiful, we're stars and we're beautiful.
We all know the empty nest syndrome. We all prepare mentally and emotionally about when our kids are going to grow up, graduate, leave the house, and start their own lives. We worry every day about that day. But nobody ever tells us about the day that our little shadow isn't going to follow us into the kitchen anymore. The day they stop asking you to tie their shoes, or to fix every problem, or to kiss every scraped knee. Nobody warned you that one day you're going to realize that you haven't been asked to play a board game, or to play any game in months, or that the bedtime stories or the songs you sing to them to get them to sleep, they've just quietly disappeared without any announcement that this was your last one. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens a little at a time. One day they're reaching for your hand to cross the parking lot, and then before you know it, they're walking 10 steps ahead of you. One day they need you to button their coat or remind them to wear it. And then what seems like the next day, they're reminding you where you left the car keys. As parents, we spend years teaching our children to become independent. We celebrate every milestone. We cheer when they learn to walk or ride a bike, or when they're able to solve problems on their own. And we are absolutely amazed when they become confident in who they are. But there's a part that no one really talks about, because every milestone they reach is also something that we are quietly letting go of. And it's a strange kind of grief, because nothing is wrong. In fact, everything is going exactly the way you hoped it would. They're growing. They're becoming capable. They're finding their own voice. And somehow, even while we are incredibly proud, our heart still misses the little person who couldn't fall asleep without one more hug, one more song, or insisted on sitting on your lap, even when they were getting too big for it. Teenagers still need us. They just need us differently. Instead of tying shoes, we're giving advice. Instead of bedtime stories, we're having late night conversations. Instead of carrying them in our arms, we are learning how to walk beside them without holding on so tightly. So maybe this season isn't about losing our children. Maybe it's about learning to love them in a new way. It's bittersweet, but it is beautiful. And if you're feeling that ache, you are not alone. Because sometimes the hardest part of parenting isn't when they leave home. It's realizing that they started leaving a little bit at a time, years before a suitcase is even packed. I think one of the biggest surprises for me has been realizing that my children didn't change overnight. There wasn't one morning where I woke up and suddenly they were teenagers. It happened so gradually that I almost missed it. Kind of like when you see someone every day, you don't really notice how much they've changed because you're watching the little changes happen one at a time in real time. And then one day someone posts an old picture and you're just sitting there thinking, wait a minute, when did that happen? When did they get taller than me? When did their voice get so deep? And when did they stop watching cartoons and wanting car keys or permits or a car? When did bedtime become midnight? When did they stop asking if they could have a snack and just start making one? When did they stop running to the door when I get home? It's funny because when they're little, every milestone is exciting. The first smile, the first laugh, the first tooth, the first word, their first steps, the first day of school. We're constantly celebrating first. We take pictures, we buy baby books, we write down dates, and we tell everyone who will listen over and over again. They rolled over today. They said, Mama, they slept through the night. Every first is exciting because it means they're growing. But somewhere along the way, those first, well, they turn into last. And we don't even realize they're happening. Nobody takes a picture of the last bedtime story. Nobody marks a calendar with the last time they tucked me in. Nobody says, quick, get the camera. This is the last time they'll crawl in your lap. Because if we knew, if we knew, I think we'd hold on just a little longer. We'd read one more book. We'd let them climb into bed one more night. We'd rock them for 5 minutes more, even though our arms are tired. We'd stop worrying so much about getting the dishes done. We'd leave that laundry sitting in a basket, and we'd put that phone down a little sooner. Not because we're bad parents, but because hindsight has a way of showing us what was truly important. I used to think I would always remember those little moments. I thought they were burned in my memory forever. And some are. But others, they're fuzzy now. I can't remember exactly what their little voices sound like. I remember pieces of it, but not perfectly. I can't remember exactly how tiny their hands were and how they felt wrapped around my finger. I remember the feeling, but I can't describe it anymore. Oh, how I wish I could bottle up those moments. Not because I want to live in the past, but because I didn't know they would become so precious. Maybe that's why we take so many pictures. I mean, when we're in the middle of raising our kids, our phone is full of random pictures. A blurry picture of them eating spaghetti, a picture of a drawing you couldn't possibly throw away, videos of absolutely nothing. They're just walking across the living room or laughing at something that you can't even remember what it was. And at the time, you wonder why you recorded it. And then years later, you realize you weren't really recording what they were doing. You're trying to hold on to who they were. Pictures become time machines. One click, that's all it takes. One click, and suddenly you're back into the season that you thought you had forgotten. You can almost hear the laughter again and smell the baby shampoo. You can almost feel the weight of a sleepy toddler on your shoulder. It's amazing what one picture can do. I find myself scrolling through old photos all the time. And you're not really looking for anything in particular. You know how that goes, how that happens. You're searching for like one picture, and then suddenly 3 hours later, you've traveled through 10 years of your life. And there they were. Little faces, gap tooth smiles, messy hairs, pajamas in the middle of the afternoon, because honestly, who was changing clothes if we ain't leaving the house? Birthday parties, Christmas morning, backyard adventures, tiny little bicycles, Halloween costumes that they insisted on wearing for 6 straight months. I laugh, I cry, sometimes both at the same time, because every picture I go through reminds me of something that I've forgotten. I haven't forgotten it forever. I just packed it away, like the Christmas decorations. They're still there, just waiting for the box to be opened. I think parenting does that. It fills your heart with memories that they don't disappear. They simply get tucked away until something reminds you they're still there. A smell, a song, a toy, a little pair of shoes. One of my favorite things is watching parents with little kids now. Not because I'm judging them. No, it's actually the opposite. Sometimes I just smile. I see a mom trying to push a shopping cart while holding a toddler who's determined to become a gymnast. She's sweating. The baby's crying. One kid's asking for cookie. The other one's trying to climb up the cart, and she looks exhausted. I remember those days. I remember thinking going anywhere with little kids deserved its own Olympic event and medal. By the time you got everybody dressed, found the missing shoe, buckled everyone in the car, unbuckled everyone, made it through the shopping, loaded your groceries, loaded the kids, drove home, unloaded, you needed a nap just for surviving Walmart. Now, I can run to the store by myself. Nobody asks for a toy. Nobody wants candy at the checkout. And nobody has to use the bathroom 5 minutes after we walk in, except for me. And nobody suddenly remembers they're starving, even though we ate 20 minutes ago. It's easier. So much easier. But here's the thing. Easy isn't always what we miss. Sometimes what we miss is being needed. That sounds so strange to say it out loud. Because I don't want my kids to stay dependent forever. That's not healthy. The goal has always been to raise capable adults, independent adults, kind, responsible adults. I never wanted them to stay little forever. But that doesn't mean I don't miss who they were. Those two things, they exist together. We can celebrate who our children are becoming while still missing that little person they used to be. Those emotions, they don't cancel each other out. They're roommates. They live together. Pride and grief, joy and nostalgia, excitement and sadness. They all sit around the same table in the heart of every parent. And I think sometimes we feel guilty for admitting that. We think that if we say we miss the toddler years, somehow we're saying that we don't appreciate the teenagers standing in front of us. Well, that's not true. Missing yesterday doesn't mean you reject today. It simply means yesterday mattered. There are seasons of life that I will never get back. First days of kindergarten, little league games where everyone chased butterflies instead of baseballs, tiny backpacks bigger than the child carrying them. Those little voices singing songs completely off key with absolute confidence. Those seasons are gone. But for now, I get front row seats to something else. I get to watch my kids become people, not just children, people. People with opinions and dreams and a sense of humor all their own, personalities that make me laugh, beliefs that they're beginning to form, talents that they're discovering. They're becoming someone I genuinely enjoy talking to, not because they're my kids, but because they're interesting human beings. Maybe that's one of the unexpected gifts of parenting teenagers. You slowly stop parenting a child and you start getting to know an adult in progress. That's actually pretty incredible when you think about it. They're no longer simply becoming who you hoped that they would be. They're becoming who they are. And that's a privilege to witness. As our kids get older, our job description changes. Nobody hands you a new employee manual. Nobody calls a meeting and says, "Congratulations, you have officially been promoted to a full-time caretaker of a trusted advisor." It just happens. When they're little, parenting feels very physical. You're carrying them, buckling them into their car seats, helping them brush their teeth, buttoning their jackets, cutting pancakes into little squares because somehow pancakes taste better when they're tiny, or toast in little circles. I had to do that. You're constantly doing something for them. And then one day you realize you're not doing nearly as much. And if we're honest, that can mess with our identity a little bit. Because for years, being needed is part of who we are. Our whole day revolved around someone else. We knew exactly who everyone is, or we know exactly who everyone is, what they're eating, when they need a nap, whether we need a lunch packed or not. We got to remind them to remember their homework. We're the schedule keeper, or we were. Maybe you still are. The snack provider, the nurse, the chauffeur, the referee, the professional finder of things that somehow only moms can find. Seriously, though, can somebody explain that? How can three people search the house for 20 minutes looking for a pair of shoes? Mom walks in and finds them in 10 seconds. We're magical. We are awesome. I mean, I don't know if motherhood comes with superpowers or if everybody else just gives up too quickly. But somehow we're expected to know where everything is. And we do. But then suddenly, they're finding their own shoes. They're packing their own bags. They're making their own decisions. And while that's wonderful, there's this tiny voice that whispers, "So, what's my job now?" I don't think that gets talked about enough. We spend years building our lives around raising children. And then one day, they don't need us to solve every problem anymore. And if we're not careful, we can mistake less needed for less valuable. But those are not the same thing, not even close. Our value has never been found in how many lunches we packed, or diapers we changed, or how many rides to practice. Those things mattered, yes, but they were expressions of love. They were not the definition of who we are. I think one of the greatest challenges of parenting teenagers is learning to love them without having to control. And that's hard. Really hard. Because when they're 5 years old, If they're about to run in the street, you grab them. No hesitation, no discussion. You pick them up and move them because you know that there is danger that they don't see. But teenagers, the dangers aren't always physical. They're emotional. They're relational. They're choices. And you can't simply scoop them up and carry them away anymore. You have to let them make decisions. You have to let them experience consequences. And you have to let them disagree with you sometimes and let them figure things out. That's probably one of the hardest parts of this season because every parent wants to protect their children. If I could build a bubble around my kids that kept every disappointment, every heartbreak, every bad decision, every mean person, every painful experience out, part of me would. But then I'd have to remind myself, strength is not built inside a bubble. Character is informed when life is easy. And confidence doesn't grow when someone else solves every problem. It grows because they've discovered they can survive hard things. That doesn't mean we stop protecting them. It means protection looks different. Instead of standing in front of every obstacle, sometimes we just stand behind them, ready to catch them if they fall, ready to encourage them when they're discouraged, ready to remind them who they are when the world tries to convince them otherwise. We're still protecting them. We're just protecting them in a different way. I remember when they were little and they would come running to me over every tiny problem. Look at me, Mom, look at me. Hey, she touched my toy. He got more crackers than I did. Everything felt like a crisis. Everything required immediate intervention. Now, the problems are bigger. Friendships, disappointments, questions about future, pressure, self-doubt. Those things we can't fix with a Band-Aid and a juice box. Sometimes all we can do is listen. And then I tell mine, can I tell you something I've learned? Because listening is harder than fixing. I like fixing things. Tell me the problem. I'll come up with 5 solutions. We'll make a list. We'll color code it if we have to. We'll figure this thing out. But teenagers, they don't always want solutions. Sometimes they just want someone to hear them because they already know what they need to do. They're simply processing it out loud. Sometimes I just have to stay silent. And that took practice. And then sometimes I just say, here's the situation. This is what I learned. This is what I did. But I can't make this decision for you. Even though every fiber of my being wants to jump in and be like, here's what you need to do. You need to ... Sometimes you need to ... They don't need another lecture. They need a safe place. They need someone who won't panic when they tell the truth. They need someone who won't immediately assume the worst. They need someone whose love doesn't disappear the moment they make a mistake. Isn't that what we all want? No matter how old we are? I don't think we ever really outgrow the need to know that someone is in our corner. Sometimes we just have to have that security. We want someone we can call when life falls apart. Someone who answers the phone. Someone who will say, come home. Maybe that's one of the greatest gifts we can give our teenagers. Not perfection, presence. Not all the answers, availability. Not control, consistency. I read something somewhere that's kind of stuck with me, and it said, children borrow your confidence until they find their own. I love that because think about it. When they're little, they look up to us before trying something scary. They climb to the top of the playground, they look down. If we're smiling, they're brave. If we're panicking, they panic. Our confidence becomes theirs. I don't think that completely goes away when they become teenagers. It just changes. They're still looking. Maybe not as obviously. Maybe not every day. But they're watching. They're watching how we handle stress, how we apologize, how we treat people, how we respond when life doesn't go according to plan. They're learning that adulthood isn't about having it all together. It's about continuing to grow. Maybe that's something we need to remember too. Just because our kids are growing doesn't mean we're done growing. We're becoming new versions of ourselves right alongside them. They're learning how to become adults. We're learning how to parent adults in training. Neither one of us has done this before. We're figuring it out together. So maybe that's why grace matters so much in this season. Grace for them, grace for ourselves. Because none of us are going to get it right every day. But thankfully, perfect parents have never been the goal. Present parents have. Sometimes we spend so much time trying to hold on to the past that we accidentally overlook the beauty that's unfolding right in front of us. Like seeing those old pictures that we talked about. Or maybe it's those memory notifications that popped up, like on this day 8 years ago. Sometimes we open them with a smile. Sometimes we open them and immediately think, oh my goodness, look how little they were. And then we find ourselves wishing just for a second that we could step back to that moment. Just one afternoon, one bedtime, one Saturday morning with cartoons and cereal, and when that was the most important thing in the world. And then I look up, and there's a teenager standing in my kitchen, taller than they used to be. Mine are taller than me. More independent than they used to be, with opinions that sometimes make me laugh and sometimes make me scratch my head. And I realize if I'm always looking backwards, I'm going to miss today. Because one day, today will be that picture that pops up. One day, I'm going to look back at this season and think, I missed that. Even the things that drive me crazy today. I'm going to miss hearing the bedroom door close because they wanted a little privacy. I'm going to miss finding cereal boxes empty in the pantry because apparently putting them in the trash was just too much work. I'm going to miss reminding someone to take the trash out for the 15th time. I am even going to miss the mountain of shoes that I trip on every day. Okay, maybe not the shoes. Let's not get carried away. But you get what I'm saying. Those ordinary moments have a funny way of becoming extraordinary memories. It's never the big vacations that I think about first. Sure, those are wonderful, but that's not usually where my mind goes. I think about those random Tuesday nights. Pizza on paper plates because nobody wanted to cook. Movie nights where everyone's piled on the couch, listening to the laughter come from another room, the sound of feet coming down the hallway, watching them sleep in the back seat on a drive home because they played so hard. Those ordinary moments, those are the ones that become priceless. I think as parents, we put so much pressure on ourselves to create these magical childhoods for our kids. Pinterest birthdays, perfect Christmas mornings, elaborate vacation, matching family pictures where everyone smiles at the same time. But can we just admit something here? Half the time, somebody's crying before the family picture. Nobody likes their outfit. Somebody forgot snacks. We're always running late. And dad is probably asking, are we almost done? At least 4 times. Because real life is messy. Real life doesn't fit neatly into any picture frame. But yet, the messy moments are usually the ones we laugh about years later. Those are the ones we remember. Nobody sits around telling stories about a perfectly organized Tuesday. We tell stories about the time the dog stole a toy and we had to go to Walmart and buy a new one because that was the cherished prized possession. Or Nerf darts getting flushed down a toilet. Or the time everyone got caught dancing in the kitchen. The time you accidentally packed a TV remote instead of diapers or wipes. Or the time you found the TV remote in a toy box at the bottom. Life isn't memorable because it's perfect. It's memorable because it's real. Maybe that's why this season feels so emotional. Because as our kids grow older, the stories change. Instead of telling funny stories about what they said, now we're telling stories about who they're becoming. I watched one of my kids help someone the other day without anyone asking. Nobody was watching. There was no reward. They just did it. And I remember thinking, that's who they're becoming. Not because I told them to, but because kindness has become a part of who they are. And that's incredible. I've watched them stand up for someone being left out. I've listened to them admit that they were wrong, and apologize without being told to. Those moments don't make adorable baby videos, and they usually don't end up in a scrapbook. But they matter, maybe even more than some of the milestones that we celebrated when they were little. Because now we're seeing character, integrity, compassion. We're seeing pieces of the adults that they will become. And that's worth celebrating too. One of the biggest shifts that I've had to make is realizing that my greatest success isn't raising children who need me forever. It's raising adults who know they can always come back. They can always call. There's a difference. I don't want my kids to feel like they cannot function without me. I want them to know that they can. I want them to be confident, capable, responsible, independent. But I also want them to know home is still home, no matter how old they get. They will always have a place where they are loved, where they don't have to earn the right to belong, where they don't have to pretend everything is okay, where they can show up after making a mistake and know that they won't be met with, I told you so. Instead, they're going to be met with, "I'm glad you're here." Because isn't that what home should feel like? A place where grace lives, a place where forgiveness is practiced, a place where people are welcome, even when life gets messy. I don't know about you, but that's the kind of home I want to build. Not one that's remembered because the floors were spotless or because dinner was homemade every night or every holiday looked like it belonged in a magazine. I want my home to be remembered as safe because there was laughter and forgiveness and because people knew they mattered, because there was always room at the table, and because when life got hard, home still feels like home. Maybe that's what parenting really is about. Not creating perfect memories, creating a place where they want to come back to. I think about my own childhood. There are things that I honestly don't remember. I don't remember every birthday gift. I don't remember every meal. I don't remember every ordinary Tuesday. But I remember how people made me feel. I remember feeling loved. I remember feeling protected. I remember knowing that there were people who would fight for me. That's what stays. Not perfection, connection. And maybe our children won't remember every toy we bought, every vacation we took, or even every school project we stayed up late helping them finish. But they'll remember how we made them feel. Did they feel heard? Did they feel safe? Did they know that they were loved even when they failed? Those are memories that will last. Those are things that become part of who they are. Maybe that's why, even though I miss the little versions of who they were, I'm excited to know the people they're becoming because every year I get to meet them again. And every year I'm proud all over again. I'm still learning every single day. Every stage of parenting asks us to let go of something. But at the same time, it's inviting us to embrace something new. When they were babies, we let go of sleepless nights. Well, eventually. When they became toddlers, we let go of bottles and pacifiers or binkies. When they started school, we let go of them being home all day. Every season has required us to loosen our grip just a little. At the time, we didn't think much about it because it was just another exciting milestone and another one was right around the corner. But somewhere around the teenage years, those milestones become less obvious. Instead of celebrating a first tooth, now we're celebrating a driver's permit. Instead of cheering because they learned to read, we're helping them figure out what they want to do with their future. Instead of teaching them how to ride a bike, we're teaching them how to drive. And if I'm honest, it feels a whole lot heavier. Because scraped knees heal pretty quickly. Broken hearts, that takes a little longer. Disappointment leaves a mark that you can't see. Rejection isn't something you can put a band-aid on. You can't kiss away anxiety. You can't hug away every fear they have about the future. And you can't make every problem disappear. As much as we want to, we just can't. There have been moments as a parent when I would give anything to take away the hurt my child was feeling. If I could have carried it for them, I would have. I think every parent understands that feeling. You'd rather have your own heart break than to watch theirs break. That's not how life works. Maybe it's a good thing, because while I can't remember every hardship, I can. I said that wrong. I'm sorry. No, I can't remove their hardships. And I can't remember everyone that they've been through. But I can remind them when they're going through something, they don't have to face it alone. There's something incredibly powerful about just knowing that you have someone in your corner. You have an army behind you. I mean, you think about our own lives. How many times has there been a problem and there was no one who could fix it? But knowing that you had someone there to go through it with you, that makes the difference. Maybe they couldn't change the diagnosis. Maybe they couldn't fix the relationship. Maybe they couldn't pay your bills. But they sat with you. They listened. They cried. They reminded you that tomorrow would come. Sometimes presence is more powerful than solution. And I think that's especially true with teenagers. I don't always have the perfect words. Actually, most days I don't. Sometimes I replay conversations in my head afterwards and I think, oh, I wish I would have said that differently. I wish I would have listened a little bit longer. Maybe ask one more question. I wish I hadn't been so quick to jump into problem solving mode. Parenting doesn't come with an instant replay button. You don't get to rewind and try that again. And if you're anything like me, well, that can lead to guilt. Oh, the guilt. The parenting guilt. Because I think we carry around backpacks full of guilt. We feel guilty for working too much. We feel guilty for not working enough. We feel guilty for saying no. We feel guilty for saying yes. Guilt for when we lose our patience, when we were too tired to play, or when we forgot Spirit Week, or when dinner comes from a drive-thru, and if we have to miss a game. We feel guilty just because we don't know an answer. We just carry guilt. Sometimes I wonder if parents would benefit from a giant community bonfire where we all gather around and throw our unnecessary guilt into the flames. Can you imagine? Here's my guilt for not making homemade cupcakes this week. Throw it in. Here's my guilt because the laundry's been sitting in the dryer for 2 days. In a fire. Here's my guilt because I forgot picture day. In the fire it goes. Or here's my guilt because I lost my patience after someone asked me for a snack 5 seconds after I sat down. Throw that in and watch it burn. Because here's the truth. Your children do not need a perfect parent. They never have. They need a parent who's willing to apologize, willing to grow, and willing to keep showing up. I think some of the most important lessons our children learn don't come from watching us get everything right. They come from watching us handle when it's all wrong. Have you ever apologized to your child? Like a real apology? Not the one that's like, I'm sorry, but just, I'm sorry. I was frustrated. I shouldn't have spoken to you that way. Will you forgive me? That's a powerful moment because it teaches them something we all need to learn. Adults aren't perfect either. We're still learning. We're still growing. We are still becoming. We put so much pressure on ourselves to look like we have it all together. But our kids are not asking us to be superheroes. asking us to be human, to be honest, to love them consistently. And well, that's something we can do. Not perfectly, but faithfully. Something else that's changed as my kids gotten older, the hugs. When they were little, they would wrap their whole body around you. They would jump into your arms without warning, and they nearly knock you over sometimes because they didn't know their own strength. Now, the hugs are different. Sometimes they're quick, sometimes they're those side hugs, and then sometimes you have to initiate them. And sometimes you have to pretend you don't notice the tiny eye roll that comes right before they hug you back. And if you're raising teenagers, you know what I'm talking about. It's almost like they have an invisible rule book. Rule number 1, never let mom think you actually enjoy the hug. Like, heaven forbid your friends will find out you still love your parents. Oh, the horror. But every now and then, you catch them off guard. Maybe they've had a hard day. Maybe they're discouraged. Maybe they're worried about something. And suddenly, the teenage wall comes down. And that hug, well, it lasts a little longer. They don't pull away right away. And in that moment, you realize your baby is still there. They're just wearing a bigger body now. That little child who wanted to be comforted, they're still there. They just learned how to hide it better. Those are the moments I treasure. Not because they're rare, but because they're reminders. Reminders that while the relationship has changed, the love hasn't. If anything, it's deeper. It's less about dependency now and more about trust. Less about needing me to fix everything and more about knowing I'll still be here when life gets hard. And honestly, I think that's one of the greatest compliments a parent can receive. It's not that your child never struggles, but that when they do, they still come looking for you. Because somewhere along the way, you've become more than the person who packed their lunches, signed permission slips. You've become home. And no matter how old they get, everyone needs a place that feels like home. It's funny, when our kids are little, people are constantly telling us to enjoy it because it goes by so fast. And they're right, it does. But I don't think we really understand what they mean until we're living on the other side of it. Because when you're in the thick of raising little kids, it does not feel fast at all. A 2-year-old can make 10 minutes feel like an entire afternoon. You look at the clock thinking surely it's lunchtime. 9:17. How? How is it only 9:17? You've already cleaned up spilt milk, broken up 3 arguments, answered 17 questions, folded 1 basket of laundry, and watched the same cartoon theme song enough times to perform it in your sleep. Those days felt long. Really, really long. But somehow, the years were short. And that's the strange thing about parenting. The days crawl. The years sprint. I can remember thinking when the kids were little, I can't wait until they're old enough to, you fill in the blank. Tie their own shoes, make their own breakfast, sleep through the night, go to the bathroom by themselves, get themselves dressed. Every parent has those thoughts, and there's nothing wrong with that. Wanting the next step for your kids doesn't mean that you don't love the current one they're in. Sometimes it just means you're tired. Sometimes it means you're human. Sometimes it means you've been awake since 4:30 because someone decided today was the perfect day to start singing at sunrise. We have all been there. But isn't it interesting that the very things we couldn't wait for eventually becomes the things that remind us that they're growing up. The first time they made their own breakfast. You celebrated. Now they don't even tell you when they're hungry. The first time they tied their own shoes, you were proud. Now you can't even remember the last time you bought something with Velcro. The first time they wanted to stay overnight instead of coming home. You smiled because they were growing up. They were getting dependent. But there was that little ache too. Not because they didn't love being home, but because you realized home isn't their whole world anymore. And that's how it's supposed to be. As parents, our goal has never been to make our children dependent on us forever. Our goal has been to give them roots and wings. Roots that remind them where they came from. Wings that can give them confidence to see where life can take them. The hard part is when those wings actually work. We spend years teaching them how to fly, and then one day they do. And our hearts whispers, wait, not yet. There's something incredibly beautiful about that, because it means that we've loved deeply. And the only reason this season hurts sometimes is because the love has always been so big. If you didn't love them, you wouldn't notice the changes. You wouldn't miss the bedtime stories or songs. You wouldn't smile at the old pictures. You wouldn't catch yourself wandering through the baby aisle at the store, remembering when diapers were a regular purchase. Love is what makes us nostalgic. Love is what makes us notice. Love is what makes us treasure ordinary moments long after they've passed. Those little ordinary moments, like the phrases that we don't hear anymore. Watch me. They used to be said about 100 times a day. Are you watching? Mom, are you watching? Watch me jump. Watch me spin. Watch me run. Watch me climb. Watch me do this thing I've already done 17 times. And every single time, you watch. Because in their little minds, it was brand new. Now, they don't ask me to watch them. They ask me to watch them in different ways. They don't always say it out loud, but they do. Every time they try something new, every time they make a difficult decision, every time they share a dream, every time they trust me enough to tell me something that's weighing on them, they're still saying, watch me. It's just a different kind of watching now. It's watching them become resilient. It's watching them become compassionate. Watching them discover gifts that they didn't know that they had. Watching them find confidence. And watching them become people that I am genuinely proud to know. Not because they're perfect, but because they're growing. Growth has always been the goal, even when growth stretches our hearts. You know something else I've realized? The conversations, they get better. Don't get me wrong. There was something absolutely adorable about listening to a 4-year-old explain why dinosaurs probably liked peanut butter, or why the moon followed our car home every night. Those conversations were priceless. But there is something equally special about sitting across from your teenager and hearing them wrestle with real ideas. Listening to them talk about what kind of person they want to become. Hearing them dream about the future. Watching them develop their own convictions. Seeing them ask questions that don't have easy answers. And those conversations remind me that all those years of reading bedtime stories or singing songs, or all those years of answering why 1,000 times a day, the years of teaching and correcting and encouraging, they mattered. Seeds were being planted, and now some of those seeds are beginning to grow. Not all at once, and not perfectly, but they're growing. Sometimes we don't realize we're making a difference because growth is slow. It's kind of like planting a tree. You don't wake up every morning and notice it's taller, but one day you stand beside it and realize, look how much it's grown. Parenting is a lot like that. Some days it feels repetitive. Some days it feels ordinary. Some days it feels like all you're doing is reminding people to pick up their socks again and again and again. I don't know where these socks go when teenagers take them off, but apparently the floor is the official storage location. Maybe that's some secret teenager handbook somewhere that we don't get to read. But it's right beside the chapter that says empty cups belong in the bedrooms forever. But even in those ordinary moments, sometimes frustrating days, something important is happening. Character is growing. Relationships are being built. Trust is forming. And one day you're going to look back and realize that all those ordinary days were quietly becoming an extraordinary life. And that's what I don't want to miss. Not just who my children used to be, but who they're becoming today. Because tomorrow, this version of them will be gone too. And I'd like to enjoy this season while I'm living in it, instead of wishing I had after it's already passed. I think one of the greatest gifts my children have ever given me is something that they probably don't even realize that they've given: perspective. Before I became a parent, I thought I understood love. I love my family. I love my friends. I loved the people closest to me. But becoming a parent introduced me to a kind of love that changed the way I see the world. It's the kind of love that makes you check on someone one more time before you go to bed. The kind of love that has you slowing down outside their bedroom just to hear them breathing. The kind of love that makes you worry when they're 5 minutes late. The kind of love that celebrates their victories as if they were your own. The kind of love that aches when they're hurting. It's a love that stretches you, humbles you, and changes you. Maybe that's why these transitions feel so emotional, because every stage of parenting asks our hearts to stretch a little further. I remember thinking when they were little that they needed me for everything, and in many ways they did. But now that they're older, I realized something. I needed them too. Not because they were responsible for my happiness, but because they filled my days in ways I never stopped to appreciate until those days changed. My mornings used to begin with cartoons playing in the background. Now they begin with someone asking if there's any coffee left. That's a different season. I used to buy fruit snacks by the case. Now sometimes my grocery bill is twice as much, and then I hear someone say, "There's nothing to eat." Excuse me? There is an entire refrigerator full of food. Apparently, if it requires effort, it doesn't count. It's amazing how teenagers can open the refrigerator door, stare into it for 3 solid minutes like they're looking for buried treasure, close it, and then announce that the house is empty. And then 5 minutes later, they're eating something. So clearly, there was food all along. They just needed time to negotiate with themselves. Parenting teenagers definitely comes with its own sense of humor. You start celebrating completely different things. Look, they actually put their plate in the dishwasher. This is amazing, they texted me back on the first try. Oh my gosh, they voluntarily told me about their day. Those become victories. And honestly, every season deserves to be celebrated. Not because it's easy, but because it will not last forever. I've been thinking a lot about the phrase, the good old days. People say it all the time. I wish I could go back to the good old days. But here's what I realized. The good old days usually don't feel like the good old days while we're living in them. They just feel like Tuesday. They just feel ordinary, routine, busy, stressful. We don't recognize them as the good old days until they become memory. What if we started treating today like one of those days that we'll miss someday? What if instead of waiting until 10 years from now to appreciate this season, we appreciate it now? Even with all its imperfection, even with the eye rolls, the laundry, the dishes, the schedule, the constant, can you pick me up at this time or can you bring me here at this time? Even with all of it, because one day the house really will be quiet. One day there really won't be shoes by the front door. There won't be backpacks everywhere. There won't be someone eating cereal at 11 o'clock at night. There won't be random hoodies left in the living room that no one claims until you wash them. There won't be voices coming from bedrooms with friends on video calls. Those things that seem ordinary now will one day become the sounds that we miss. I'm not saying that to make anyone sad. Actually, I hope it does the opposite. I hope it reminds us to look around, to really look around, because I think we're standing in the moments. One day, we will wish we could visit again. Not forever, not just for an afternoon, just long enough to hear the laughter, just long enough to hear someone yell, "Mom," from the other side of the house, just long enough to pile everyone in the car one more time. Just long enough to sit around the dinner table while someone tells a story that takes 20 minutes because they keep getting distracted. Those are the moments that are going to become treasures. Not because they were extraordinary, but because they were ours. One of the hardest things about parenting is accepting that our children are writing stories that do not revolve around us anymore. When they're little, we're in every chapter. Every adventure includes us. Every problem comes to us. Every celebration includes us. But as they grow, their world expands. Friends become important. Other teachers, adults, and mentors influence them, encourage them. And one day, maybe our husband or a wife is going to become the person that they tell everything to. And if we're honest, that's going to sting a little bit. Not because we're jealous, but because we're realizing our role is changing again. We're no longer the center of their universe. We're becoming part of a foundation that they stand on. Let's think about that for a second. A foundation isn't always seen. Oh yeah, people notice the house, the windows, the front porch, the decorations. Nobody walks up and says, "Wow, look at that incredible foundation." But without it, nothing else is going to stand. That's us. We're the foundation. Years of bedtime prayers, conversations in the car, years of hugs, correcting, encouraging, years of showing up. Those things become the foundation of our children, and they build their lives on it. And just because they don't mention it every day, it doesn't mean it isn't there. Sometimes the greatest evidence that you've done your job well is that they have the confidence to step out on their own. That's not losing them. That's watching the foundation hold. So maybe instead of mourning every step they take away from us, we could smile knowing that we helped them learn how to take those steps in the first place. And what an incredible privilege that is. It's not an easy one, but it is incredible. And when I stopped long enough to think about it, I realized something. I may miss the little hands that reached up for mine. But I would never trade the opportunity to watch those same hands reach towards the future with courage, because that's what we've been praying for all along. That's one more thing I've been wrestling with. And there's one more thing I've been wrestling with, not just that one. Sometimes I wonder if we're so busy mourning what our children no longer do that we forget to notice all the new ways that they still choose us. Because here's the truth. Teenagers may not crawl into your lap, but they still come looking for you. It just looks different. They'll wander into the kitchen while you're making coffee and just stand there for no apparent reason. At least that's what it looks like. But they're not just standing there, looking at the refrigerator, closing it, opening it again, looking in the pantry, checking the refrigerator one more time just in case food magically appears in the last 30 seconds. And while they're pretending they're looking for something to eat, they start talking. Not because they plan to. It just happens. And they'll tell you something funny that happened. They'll mention someone who said something ridiculous. They'll ask what you think about something someone did. No, it doesn't look like those bedtime conversations from years ago. But it's an invitation. It's their way of saying, I'm here. Sometimes they don't need your full attention. They just want your company. And I think we miss that if we're always comparing today to yesterday. Maybe they'll come sit beside you on the couch. Neither one of you are talking. You're both scrolling through phones, watching television. It's quiet. And years ago, I would have thought they don't even want to spend time with me. But now, I realized out of every room in the house, they chose this one. Sometimes love doesn't announce itself. It just simply shows up and sits on the other end of the couch. I think we underestimate how meaningful those quiet moments are. We tend to think that connection has to be deep conversations and grand gestures, but relationships are often built in ordinary moments. Shared silence, making dinner together, a drive to the store, folding laundry while talking about absolutely nothing important. Those little moments become the glue. I remember when my kids were younger, I always thought there would be some big moment where parenting shifted, like flipping a light switch. One day I'd be parenting kids, next day I'd be parenting teenagers. But it wasn't like that at all. It was more like watching the sunset. You didn't really notice that it was getting darker minute by minute. And then suddenly you look outside and realize, oh, it's dark. That's how this season feels. It arrived quietly, slowly. No announcement, no warning. Just one ordinary day after another until suddenly I realized, oh, we're here. I think we grieve quietly because no one else sees what we've lost. I mean, people celebrate the first day of kindergarten. They celebrate graduations, weddings, those obvious transitions. Nobody throws a party for the last bedtime story, okay? Nobody brings you a casserole because your child doesn't hold your hand anymore. Nobody sends you a sympathy card because they called you mom instead of mama or mommy. Those little losses are invisible. But invisible doesn't mean insignificant because they are real. And if you've ever found yourself unexpectedly emotional while looking through old baby clothes or memories, or holding a tiny pair of shoes that you somehow just couldn't throw away, or hearing another child laugh in the grocery store and then suddenly remembering your own, you are not crazy. You are not overly emotional. You're simply remembering. You're honoring a season that mattered. I think we should give ourselves permission to do that. Not to live in the past, but to appreciate it. I mean, there's a difference. Nostalgia becomes unhealthy when we refuse to leave yesterday. But gratitude, it allows us to look back with a smile while continuing to walk forward. That's where I want to live. Not pretending I don't miss those years, but also not missing the years I'm living in right now. Because I've started asking myself, what will I miss today? Like, seriously, think about it. 10 years from now, what will you wish you could have experienced one more time? Whatever season you're in, think about that. Will it be a late night trip to pick them up from a sleepover because they've decided to come home? Will it be hearing all of them laugh down the hallway? Will it be watching them race through the house 5 minutes before everyone is supposed to leave because, well, somebody forgot something? Will it be the smell of their favorite shampoo as they walk by? The endless hoodies hanging over a chair? Or the sound of music coming from behind a closed door? Right now, those things can feel ordinary, sometimes even annoying. But one day, they'll become memories. The older my children get, the more I've realized that they don't need a perfect version of me, and they don't need me to have endless energy or the right words. They don't need me to know exactly how to navigate every challenge they're facing. They just need to know that I'm here, still cheering them on, believing in them, and making room at the table. I still answer the phone. I still pray for them. And I still celebrate their wins. And I still love them on the days they're easy to love and on those days that they're not. Isn't that what family is? It's choosing each other over and over again. Not always because we've earned it, but because love makes that choice every single day. Maybe that's the lesson this season has been teaching me all along, that love has to grow. When they were little, love looked like carrying them. Now, love looks like walking beside them or a few steps behind them. Sometimes cheering from the sidelines, and sometimes it's just simply trusting that the values you've spent years planting will continue to grow long after your voice isn't the loudest one they hear. But that is a scary thought, but it's a beautiful one because it means we've been preparing them for more than tomorrow. We've been preparing them for life. When I look at my kids today, I don't just see the little ones I miss. I see the adults they're becoming. And honestly, that's something worth celebrating too. I've been thinking about all of this a lot, and I realized something that caught me, well, completely off guard. Because I don't just miss who my children used to be. Sometimes I miss who I used to be. Not because I want to go back, not because life was easier, because let's be honest, I was probably more tired then than I am now. But every season of motherhood shapes us. When my kids were little, I was mom every second of the day. My day had rhythm. Wake up, make breakfast, clean up breakfast, sort laundry, break up an argument, find someone's missing something, read a book, sing a song, wipe a face, find clothes, cook dinner, give bath, bedtime stories again, collapse into bed, repeat, tomorrow. It was exhausting, but it was also familiar. I knew exactly what was expected of me. But now the rhythm has changed. They don't need me to pour the cereal or the milk anymore. They don't need me to zip their jackets or brush their teeth. And if I'm honest, there have been many moments where I have wondered, who am I? Because they don't need me in those ways anymore. I don't think we ask that question out loud because, well, it feels selfish. Like admitting it means we're making their growing up about us. I don't think that's what it is at all. I think it's simply recognizing that motherhood changes us too. Every time our children grow into a new season, we're invited into one as well. They're not the only ones growing. We are too. I think about a butterfly. Everyone watches the butterfly. Nobody really pays attention to the cocoon. But transformation happens to both. Our children are becoming adults, and we are becoming parents of adults, or adults in training. Neither one of those transformations are easy, and neither one of those happen overnight. But both require letting go of who we used to be. And maybe that's why this season feels so unfamiliar. We're learning a new version of ourselves. I used to know exactly how to help. Now, sometimes the best thing and the only thing I know to do is pray. I used to solve problems with hugs and band-aids, silly songs. Now I solve them by reminding myself that I can't live their life for them. And that's hard, especially for those of us who are fixers. If you're anything like me, your first instinct is to jump in. You want to protect, to shield, to smooth the path, to remove every obstacle before they ever even trip. But then I remembered, if someone had removed every obstacle from my life, I would not be who I am today. Some of the greatest lessons I have learned came through things I wish I hadn't gone through. The disappointments, failures, mistakes, the moments I thought I couldn't survive. Looking back now, I wouldn't choose those experiences. But I also don't want to erase what they taught me. That doesn't mean it makes it easier to watch our children struggle. Not even a little bit. But it does remind me that growth usually happens in places that are not comfortable. You know what I hope my children remember when they look back someday? I hope they remember laughter. Not because life was always funny, but because we found reasons to laugh anyway. I hope they remember that our house wasn't perfect, but it was filled with love. I hope they remember that mistakes are not the end of the story, that apologies can happen, and that forgiveness is normal, and that grace lived here. I hope they remember dancing in the kitchen, even if nobody could dance. I hope they remember late night ice cream runs, inside jokes that nobody else understood, movie nights where somebody always fell asleep halfway through, or road trips that took way longer than they should have because we had to stop for snacks. I hope they remember that home felt peaceful, not perfect. Peaceful. Because perfection isn't possible. But peace is something that we can choose. We can choose to make our homes places where people breathe easier, where they don't have to perform, where they're loved because of who they are. not because of everything they get right. I think sometimes parents worry so much about whether they're doing enough. Am I teaching enough? Am I spending enough time? Am I making enough memories? Am I enough? Can I answer that question for just a minute? If you're showing up, if you're loving your children, if you're apologizing when you're wrong, if you're celebrating who they are instead of trying to make them someone they're not, if you're praying for them, if you're creating a home where they know they belong, you are giving them way more than you realize. Will you get everything right? Absolutely not. And neither will I. And neither did the parents before us. And one day, our children won't either. Because perfection has never been passed down through generations. Grace has. The older I get, the more I realize that my children do not need a flawless parent. They need parents who model what it looks like to keep growing, to keep learning, to keep loving, to keep choosing each other. Maybe one of the greatest gifts we can give our teenagers is allowing them to see we're still becoming too. Adulthood is not the finish line. It's just another season of growth. Just like childhood was. Just like teenager years are. We're all growing. We're all learning. We're all figuring out how to love each other in the changing seasons. Maybe that's why family is such a beautiful thing. Because it gives us the opportunity to grow together. Not at the same pace or in the same ways, but side by side. And I wouldn't trade that journey for anything. Not even one more day of stepping on Legos. Maybe I'd trade one Lego, but those things still hurt. I don't think we're actually mourning the loss of our children's childhood. I think we're mourning the end of a chapter that we didn't realize we were reading for the last time. There's a difference. You don't really know when one chapter ends and another begins. There's no title page, announcement, or dramatic music. One day you're reading bedtime stories, the next day they want to borrow your car. One day you're packing dinosaur-shaped nuggets, the next day you're wondering why there is no food in the house after you just bought groceries yesterday. But seriously, how? I don't understand the science behind teenage appetites. I think there's a hidden portal somewhere in the kitchen. You put the groceries in, teenagers walk by, and somehow they're gone. I don't know how it works. I just know it does. But even those things, the grocery bills, the late night snack raids, the constant what's for dinner, those are chapters too. And one day, believe it or not, I'm gonna miss them. I never really thought I'd say that, but I probably will. Because I've learned something about memory. Memory has a way of sanding down all the rough edges. Things that frustrated us the most sometimes will become the stories we laugh the hardest about. Remember when? Remember when you hid in the pantry just to eat one chocolate bar by yourself? Remember when they insisted they needed 17 stuffed animals to sleep? Remember when they cried because you cut the sandwich into squares instead of triangles? Those moments become family stories. Stories that get told around holiday tables and that make everyone laugh. Stories that remind us of who we've been together. I hope years from now my kids tell stories about home with smiles on their faces. And I hope they remember laughing more than yelling. I hope they remember encouragement more than criticism. I hope they remember that they were allowed to be themselves. And I hope they remember that even when we disagree, love was never up for debate. Because that's something I never want them to question. My love for them should never depend on whether they're making choices I agree with. It should never disappear because they are struggling. It should never be conditional. Will there be consequences? Of course. That's part of parenting. But consequences and love are not opposites. Real love tells the truth. Real love sets boundaries. Real love says, I care about you too much to pretend that this doesn't matter. Real love says, I'm not going anywhere. I think our teenagers need to hear that more than we realize. The world they're growing up in is different than many of us grew up in. Everything moves so fast. Opinions change overnight. Social media tells them they have to be everything all at once. Successful, funny, confident, popular, beautiful, perfect. It's exhausting. Sometimes I think what they need the most is one place where they don't have to perform. One place where they don't have to compete. One place where they're simply loved because of who they are. That's what I want my home to be. A place where the mask come off. A place where it's okay to have a bad day. A place where mistakes do not make you an outsider. A place where grace is practiced every single day. Because let's face it, we all need grace. Parents, teenagers, siblings, everybody needs grace. I don't know about your family, but mine has never needed another lecture about perfection. We needed grace, lots of it. And maybe that's one of the unexpected blessings of parenting teenagers. They remind us that we're still learning too. There are conversations I wish I could do over, moments I wish I had handled differently, words I wish I could take back. But there's also moments that I surprised myself, moments where I stayed calm when I normally would have reacted, moments where I listened and did not interrupt, and moments where I chose connections over being right. Those moments didn't happen because I finally became the perfect parent. They happened because, well, I'm changing too. We don't talk about that enough. Children aren't the only ones growing up. Parents are growing too. The version of me who raised toddlers is not the same version of me raising teenagers. And I shouldn't be, because I've learned and changed. I've softened in some places and become stronger in others. I've realized that winning an argument isn't nearly as important as keeping the relationship. I've realized that being available matters more than always having the perfect answer. I've realized that sometimes the most spiritual thing I can do is simply listen without trying to fix everything. And that lesson did not come naturally. It came slowly. One conversation at a time. One mistake at a time. One apology at a time. One hug at a time. One prayer at a time. Maybe that's what parenting has always been. Not a destination where one day we finally figure it out, but a lifelong invitation to keep becoming. Become more patient, compassionate, more understanding, more willing to see our children not just as extensions of ourselves, but as people entrusted to us for a reason. That word, entrusted, it changes everything for me. Because it reminds me that those precious people were never really mine to keep. They were mine to love, to teach, to encourage, to guide, to pray over, to cheer for, but never mind to hold so tightly that they couldn't become who they were created to be. That's a humbling thought. And if I'm honest, it's also a freeing one. Because it reminds me that success as a parent isn't measured by how long my children need me. It's measured by whether they know they'll always have me, no matter how old they get, no matter where life takes them, no matter how many birthdays pass, no matter how many miles separate us someday. I hope they will always know if you need home, you still have one. And maybe, just maybe, that's what every child, no matter their age, is really looking for. Home. What is it that actually makes a place feel like home? Is it the furniture, the paint colors, the decorations? No. We've all walked into beautiful homes that didn't feel welcoming. And we've walked into simple homes that immediately made us feel safe. Because home has never really been about the building, it's about the people. It's about the atmosphere, about knowing you're accepted and hearing someone say, I'm glad you're here. I want my children to feel that for the rest of their lives. I want them to know that no matter how old they are, no matter where they live, no matter what life looks like, walking through my front door should feel like exhaling after holding your breath. It should feel familiar, comfortable, safe. Not because everything's perfect, but because love lives there. I hope they always know that they don't have to earn a seat at my table. They don't have to impress me. They don't have to pretend they've got it all together. They can just come home. As our children become more independent, our relationship has the opportunity to become more intentional. When they're little, they're with us because they have to be. When they're older, every conversation, every visit, every phone call, every hug, every moment they choose to spend with us is exactly that, a choice. I don't know about you, but that changes the way I look at things. Instead of being sad that they don't need me in the same ways, I'm going to be thankful every time they choose to include me. Every time they ask my opinion, or they send me a funny meme, or they tell me about their day, or they call or text just because. Those moments are gifts. And gifts have a way of making us appreciate things differently. Maybe that's what this whole season is teaching me. Not to count what I've lost, but to notice what I've been given. Because, well, I may no longer have sticky little fingerprints on every window, but I have conversations that challenge me. I have inside jokes that only our family understands. I have teenagers who can make me laugh so hard I cry. I have memories that continue to grow instead of ending. Childhood didn't disappear. It simply grew into something different, something a little quieter, but a lot different and a lot deeper. Something that doesn't always ask to be carried, but still reaches for connection. That's a pretty beautiful trade. As I started putting this episode together, I realized something that made me smile. We spend so much of our children's lives teaching them how to let go. Let go of a binky, of training wheels. Let go of our hand as they walk into school. Or let go of fear when trying something new. And then somewhere along the way, I realized, I'm the one learning to let go. Not all at once, just little by little, one season at a time. There are days when I look at my kids and I still see little versions of them. I know they're taller, I know they're older, and I know they're becoming adults. But sometimes when they laugh a certain way or make a certain face, just for a second, I see my baby again. And it's almost like time folds in on itself. The teenager disappears and the little kid shows up. And just as quickly, they're gone again. Neither one is wrong. One is who they were, the other is who they are. And somehow, we have enough room to love both. I don't think loving who they used to be takes anything away from who they're becoming. If anything, it makes my appreciation even deeper because I know every version. I knew them before they could walk, before they could talk, before they could read, before they knew who they wanted to be. I've had the incredible privilege of watching a human being slowly grown and unfolding into themselves. What an amazing gift that is. There are few relationships in life where you get to witness that kind of transformation. We've watched them learn right from wrong, fail, and try again. We've watched their dreams change, their personalities develop. We've watched them become them. It's having a front row seat to a miracle that happens slowly. The older my children get, the more I enjoy simply talking to them, with them, not talking to them, talking with them, having conversations and some deep conversations. I love hearing what they think. And sometimes they say something so wise that I wonder when they became old enough to understand life that way. And then other times they say something so ridiculous that I laugh until my stomach hurts. I wouldn't trade either one. One of the greatest gifts we can give our kids is the freedom to become who God created them to be, not who we imagined they would be. Because our job isn't to create little copies of ourselves. Our job is to raise people who know who they are, people who love well, tell the truth, work hard, show kindness, and people who know where to go when life falls apart. If we've done that, then we've done something that matters. When they were little, I didn't think they noticed when I was tired or discouraged. And now they ask, "Are you okay? What happened? How was your day?" The first time one of my kids genuinely asked me that, it caught me off guard. Because for years I had been asking them. And suddenly, they're asking me. I wasn't prepared for that. I wasn't prepared for how our relationship began to feel more mutual. Not equal because we're still the parent, but mutual. There's a give and take. They can encourage us. We encourage them. They make us laugh. We make them laugh. They check on us. We check on them. It's different, but it's beautiful. I think that's why I don't like the phrase emptiness very much. Well, very much anymore. Not because it's necessarily wrong. One day it will probably describe my house. But because it makes it sound like parenting ends. Like once they leave, that's it, mission accomplished. Well, I don't believe that. I think parenting simply changes addresses. One day it happens in the living room. Later it's going to happen over the phone or around a dinner table during a visit or through a text message. Can I ask your advice about something? Or I just wanted to tell you what happened today. I don't think that relationship disappears. I believe it just grows and stretches, matures, just like our kids do. I don't want to spend these days wishing for yesterday because tomorrow is bringing a relationship that I've never got to experience before. I've never known my children as adults. I've never watched them build careers or family or traditions of their own. And I've never seen the full story that God is writing in their lives. And if I'm honest, I'm excited for that. Oh, yeah, I'm going to miss holding their hands and the bedtime stories, and I'm going to miss hearing the tiny little feet. I'm probably even going to miss finding toys in places that they have absolutely no business being. But I'm excited about tomorrow. I can do both. I can smile at the memories while looking forward to what's to come and being present in the moments we're in now. Maybe this season feels so emotional because we're losing our children. Or not because we're losing our children. Maybe it's because we're witnessing everything we've spent years praying for. From the day they were born, we've prayed. Lord, help them grow. Help them become kind. Help them make good choices. Protect them. Give them wisdom. Help them become the person you have created them to be. We've prayed for growth, maturity, independence. We've prayed for that one day that they will be able to stand on their own 2 feet. And then, when those prayers begin to unfold right in front of us, our hearts ache. Not because the prayers weren't answered, but because answered prayers often look like change. And it's bittersweet change. It really is. Think of a tree the same way we think of the root of a tree in our relationship with God. You don't plant a tree hoping it stays the same size forever. You plant it because you want it to grow. You water it, you protect it, you pull the weeds, you make sure it has what it needs. And then one day, you stand beneath its branches and it's taller than you ever imagined. Would you miss the tiny sapling? Sure. But would you also stand in awe of the tree it became? Maybe that's how we're supposed to see our children. We're preparing their roots, but their branches are going to grow higher than us and spread out farther. They're not people we're losing. It was a privilege for us to know them, to get to know them. Not everyone gets to experience parenthood. Not everyone gets to watch little hands become strong hands. Not everyone gets to hear someone call them mom or dad. And I don't ever want to take that privilege for granted, even on the hard or frustrating days. It's still a privilege. I still miss the hugs, the bedtime stories, tiny shoes, sticky fingerprints. But they were never the point. They were the gifts. Gifts for a season. We were building something much bigger than I ever realized when they were smaller. We were building a relationship. A relationship doesn't stop growing just because childhood ends. If we're willing, it can become richer, deeper, more intentional. They may not need me to help with homework anymore, but maybe they'll ask, "Hey Mom, what do you think?" They may not need me to drive them everywhere, but maybe they'll walk through my door carrying babies of their own. Maybe, if I'm really lucky, I'll get to watch them be the kind of parents who understand everything we're talking about today. One day they'll pick up their own child and wonder, when will the last time be? Maybe they'll step on a Lego in the middle of the night and think, Mom was right, those things really do hurt. And maybe in those moments, we'll understand each other in a brand new way. Not because they've become parents, but because they'll understand just how deep this love grows. Every generation thinks they're teaching the next one, but the truth is, we're all teaching each other. Our children have taught us patience, perspective, humility, joy, the ability to laugh when life doesn't go according to plan. They remind us to slow down, chase fireflies, watch sunset, dance in the kitchen for no reason, to celebrate tiny victories, and to ask questions. A lot of them. They've taught us probably way more than we'll ever realize. This season isn't about saying goodbye. It's about saying thank you. Thank you for letting me be your mom. Thank you for every sticky hug, every bedtime story or song, every middle of the night wake up, every science project that took over the kitchen table, every game, every recital, every picture, every awkward haircut over the years. Thank you for helping me become who I am. Because while I was busy raising you, you were raising parts of me too. You taught me to be more patient than I thought I could be, more selfless than I thought I could be, more resilient than I knew I was, and more grateful for ordinary moments. You made me laugh harder than anyone else, and you stretched my faith and my heart. You stretched my understanding of unconditional love, and for all of that, thank you. The almost grown kiddos, they deserve your respect, your encouragement, your time, and your belief in who they're becoming. Every version of them deserves to be fully seen, just like every version of you deserves a little grace. So if you're listening today and you've been feeling this quiet ache that you just couldn't quite put into words, maybe now you know. You're not grieving because you've lost your child. You're grieving because you have been blessed enough to watch them grow. And that's a very different kind of sorrow. It's a kind that's wrapped tightly into gratitude, the kind that smiles through tears, that looks back with thankfulness, and looks ahead with hope. And maybe that's what Grace and Grit has always been about, finding beauty in the bittersweet, finding laughter in the chaos, and gratitude in the changing season. Because life keeps moving forward, our children keep growing, and our hearts somehow keep making room for every version of them. It's like a little miracle of parenthood. Your heart never replaces one season with another. It simply grows big enough to hold them all. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with me. And if today's episode has resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you. Tell me about a moment you didn't realize was the last until it had already passed. Or tell me about something your teenager does now that reminds you your little kid is still in there somewhere. And until next time, remember to give yourself grace, hold your people close, and laugh whenever you get a chance. And keep finding beauty hidden in the everyday chaos. I'll see you guys next time.
There